These devices are some of the most powerful and dangerous machines on the face of the earth. Their brute power and explosive nature can flatten cities, take thousands of lives, and destroy countries. Despite these capabilities, many lives have been spared by these devices' precision and accuracy, thereby limiting collateral damage and assuring destruction for those who initiate destructive actions. What are these machines of war?
Missiles. Triumph or tragedy? We'll let you decide. Modern missiles come in a variety of styles and are common in the world today. They are surface-to-surface, surface-to-air, air-to-air, and air-to-ground. Missiles can be radar-guided, laser-guided, wire-guided, and even infrared heat-seeking. But missiles were not always this complex, or even used for the same purposes. We take you back to China.
The first rockets were accidents in which religious ceremonies threw gunpowder-filled tubes into fires. Some of these rockets failed to detonate and shot off. The true rocket was formed with tubes filled with gunpowder attached to arrows. The first reported use of these gunpowder-filled arrows was at the dawn of the 13th century. It was used during the Battle of Kai Kang with the Mongols in 1232. The Mongols soon adopted the use of the gunpowder-filled tubes and spread this invention to Europe.
The only improvements made to missiles before World War II was done by Roger Bacon with his improvement on the range of the rockets. Europe, as well as the rest of the world, used the rockets for very little until the beginning of World War II. Shortly before the war, Robert Goddard drastically improved missiles by developing liquid-propelled missiles and a gyroscope system for control. World War II brought about a new era for missiles. Germany created the first surface-to-air missile, and Wernher von Braun was the father of the V-2 missiles, the first ballistic missiles, that were in 1936. They had internal guidance systems with control to deal with rolling, pitching, and yawing. In the late 1940s, wire-guided and radar-guided missiles appeared. In practice, only 20 of 23,000 missiles launched by NATO in 1999 Bachmann air operations caused collateral damage or civilian casualties. Long-guided bombs represented only 4.3% of the bombs in the Persian Gulf War, yet destroyed 75% of the Iraqi infrastructure.
My name is Gary Davis. I started working for the Defense Department in 1983, worked at Westinghouse Defense Center in Baltimore, and then for Boeing Defense Center in Duluth, Georgia. Mainly what I worked on was smart bombs and kinetic kill vehicles. In 1991, the Air Force asked Boeing to take some of their conventional bombs, 500-pound, 1,000-pound bombs, and make them into smart bombs that they would use in the Persian Gulf War. And smart bombs were basically, we took dumb bombs that you would drop out of planes and hooked a bunch of smarts and cameras and computers up to the front of them. And this allowed pilots to drop the bombs clear of any dangerous combat, usually around 30 to 60 miles away from the combat, and they would fly themselves in using GPS or the pilot guiding them in. Once they got to where the target was located, the pilot would take over and try to lock onto something like a building or a car or something to give stability to the bomb as it started to fly in. And slowly the pilot would see the image get larger and larger, and he could update it to the door or the window, something that was an easy entry point into a building, so that there would be more damage internally to the building and not as much to the exterior, since usually it's the insides that you were trying to get, the people in it, or the technology in the buildings, or something like that.
This improvement in technology was a great triumph for humanity through the lowering of collateral damage and the changing of warfare from mass civilian bombings to precise attacks in which only the targets were killed.
Ronald James Thomas Beaton. I joined the United States Air Force in 1952. I was an enlisted man, and then I passed a week-long battery of tests and passed them, went into the aviation cadet program, and became a navigator bombardier in the Strategic Air Command. I retired in 1972. This term, collateral damage, It's a euphemism. It's pretty words that are aimed at covering up the fact that you're killing enemy civilians. Well, let me tell you about that. During World War II, the Japanese factories operated in a strange manner. They had miniature workshops all around the main factory that assembled whatever weapon it was. And so we determined early on that if you killed the workers, the factory would stop producing weapons. So call it collateral damage if you want. A general by the name of Curtis LeMay, who was my boss, by the way, decided not to drop very many 500-pounders. He had all of the guns taken off the B-29s except for the tail gun. And he stuffed his B-29s with incendiary bombs. And he made the airplanes go in at 5,000 feet instead of 20,000 feet and spread these incendiary bombs over the cities of Japan. Bear in mind that before Nagasaki or Hiroshima ever happened, we had an incendiary bomb attack on the city of Tokyo in which over 100,000 Japanese citizens were burned to death.
The automations of these missiles warranted worry by all. This was especially important during the Cold War.
Would totally destroy 4 huge cities if the Russians ever attacked us, and they knew it. And they also knew that we had these 9 megaton bombs, also the hydrogen bombs. So they were afraid to go to war. And the philosophy was called MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. Both sides would totally destroy the other, and so it was a standoff. And it kept not the peace, but a nervous kind of standoff is what it kept.
The fear of nuclear annihilation led to the development of smart anti-missile defense systems securing a country's population.
At Boeing, we were approached to work on a Star Wars program that was started by Ronald Reagan. Initially, under Ronald Reagan, it started with a project called Brilliant Pebbles, which was a missile that we would launch from the United States and would go into the atmosphere. And when an incoming missile came at us through the atmosphere, it would let out thousands and thousands of little pebbles, and these pebbles would hit the incoming missiles and destroy them. Shortly after Ronald Reagan left office, Brilliant Pebbles was canceled. But what survived was a project called the KKV vehicles, or the kinetic kill vehicles. And these were missiles that were launched from the United States into the atmosphere. And when incoming missiles were detected, they would align themselves with them. The incoming missiles would get off a tremendous amount of heat due to the speed they were traveling at and leaving our atmosphere. And we would align ourselves with these incoming missiles. And since we were traveling about 2 times the speed of sound and they were traveling 2 or 3 times the speed of sound, we would approach each other very quickly. Our only goal was to align ourselves so that we had an impact. If an impact occurred, it would destroy their incoming missile.
In the early stages, missiles quickly accelerated the development of aeronautical engineering, yet the use was not all peaceful. Germans used them in World War II to kill many innocent people, and currently, countries such as North Korea and Iran threaten millions of civilians by the long range of nuclear warheads placed in rockets. Other countries send missiles to devastate towns and cause terror. Defense systems, empowered by rockets, KKVs, and Star Wars-type projects triumphantly combat this terroristic tragedy. Smart bombs are also able to pinpoint the target, saving surrounding civilians, yet destroy the target with devastating force, leaving all potential threats terrified of guaranteed retaliation. This saves lives through a standoff-type scenario.